would have a scam where he would pirate the masters of some major artists. He would pirate the masters, he would duplicate these masters, and he would fill the retail stores with them at a lower price than the record labels. The big labels would sell them to the stores. So these records were selling extensively. They were his records, he was getting the revenue, the major labels were getting nothing, and the artists were getting beat out of their royalties. Now the artists, okay, of course, would go into the stores and they'd see these records flying off the shelves, and they would go back to the labels and say, hey, you know, we see these stores stacked with our records, and yet we're not getting the royalties. What's going on? So the big labels, they do their investigation. They find out that there's counterfeit records going into the stores at a cheaper price. So who do they call? They call Morris Levy. They say, Morris, we got this problem. These record companies, you know, they're selling counterfeit records. Our artists are not getting the royalties, and we're getting beat out of revenue. Can you help us? And Morris would say, of course, I can help you. It's going to cost you X amount of dollars. He would charge them hundreds of thousands of dollars to put a stop to those counterfeit records going into those stores. And who did he put a stop on? Himself, because he was the one that was doing it. So he would stop them, and he would actually then start doing again with another label in another company. He formed like a daisy chain of companies to continue to pull this scam on the major record labels. And I'm talking about, this is big money. This is huge money. So he pulled that quite successfully for quite some time. And of course, who was going to mess with him? They all knew his organized crime involvement. Nobody would mess with him. It was better for the record companies to pay him, and they did, the major labels. Another thing that the mob was quite involved in at that time was something called payola. Now, you might be familiar with that term, but just so you know, it's illegal for anyone, whether it be an artist, a record label, an independent agent, to pay a DJ to push somebody's record to the top and give it more play. You can't do that. Okay, unless you disclose the fact that somebody's paying you to do that, because the more airplay that a record gets, normally the better the sales. So it was a common practice. Organized crime guys would do it all the time. Morris Levy was the king of this, where he would be paying DJs under the table to push his artist label. And he had a lot of big artists at the time. I mean, Sammy Davis, Tommy James, Pearl Bailey, you name it. All the big artists in the 60s, many of them, I should say, were signed to Roulette Records. And he made a ton of money in that regard. So payola was big. A lot of people were indicted on that at various times. It's illegal to do that. It's only legal if you disclose the fact that you're paying the DJ, but they don't want to do that. When somebody hears that they're paying somebody to you know, push the record, well, that kind of taints the record. Nobody's going to buy it. So they would never disclose it. So payola was huge. And even the big labels were involved in this in some way. They were hiring guys under the table to pay the DJs at the time. There was a big case, I think, with Alan Freed, who was a huge DJ at the time out of Cleveland and New York. He was involved in some payola scam at the time. So that's one thing that Morris Levy was heavily involved in. Publishing. For those of you that are not involved in the record business or don't understand it at all, publishing is where all the money is. You write the song, you make the money. Every time that song is played by anybody at any time, Abscam, BMI, they keep a record of it, and you get paid. Well, I'll tell you what Morris used to do. He used to fraudulently put his name as one of the writers, one of the songwriters, and he would keep all the publishing. He beat a lot of his artists that way. And they were afraid to say anything because it was Morris. They knew his connections. They didn't want to say anything. He made millions in publishing, okay, millions in publishing by, again, fraudulently saying that he was one of the writers of the songs. He did that all the time.
Y'all might not know this about me, man, but I am a very, very huge fan of The Sopranos. The Sopranos is one of my favorite shows of all time. I think it's the greatest TV show ever. I love Godfather, I love Casino, I love Goodfellas. Like, I really am into Mafia stuff, and not so much because I wanted to be a gangster. I just always admired how they made their money and how they upheld their code of ethics. This dude talking right here is Michael Franzese. He used to be a capo in the Colombo crime family. This ain't no actor. This is a real dude. You need to go look him up. Go to his YouTube channel, go watch his stuff. He has some really, really good content. So shout out to you, Michael, for doing all this, man, and saying everything. I appreciate it. My ducks, my swans, welcome to the pond. My name is Dorian from GroupHMusic.com, and right here we got the former capo of the Colombo crime family, Michael Franzese, talking about how Morris Levy was committing every single scam that the music industry could possibly commit. This dude was re-recording people's albums, punking the record stores and saying, don't sell the copy that's owned by the record label, sell my copy. The fans ain't gonna care, which they didn't. They bought it and he was keeping all the money. The record labels had no clue. The artists are like, yo, the album is everywhere, why not getting paid? Well, you're not getting paid because the record label ain't getting paid. Because all that went to Morris because he illegally duplicated y'all shit. Record labels called Morris to fix it because Morris is mob connected. He charged the record label to pay him to take his illegally duplicated and re-recorded records out of the record store so they could put their shit in there like it was supposed to begin with. That's a hell of a fucking scheme. I'm already talking about this shit, but who is Morris Levy? Morris Levy is a Jewish guy from Harlem, New York, who was just a scam artist. In the 1940s, Morris Levy became a nightclub owner. His first club was called the Cock Lounge. And what he did is he started booking black acts, Charlie Parker, people like that. And when he would book these black acts, anytime you perform music live, this is still the rule to this day, you get paid for that from your publishing company. So if you're with ASCAP or BMI, if you perform your song live, you get paid for that. I think it's only like $10, $20, but you still get paid. So back then it was a little bit more. And so a representative from ASCAP came up to Morris Levy. He was like, hey, you had Charlie Parker perform. We need to get paid. He was like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean? Motherfuckers get paid for that? He was like, yeah, they get paid for that. They get paid for publishing. They get paid for royalties. They're like, well, who gets the money? The people that own the masters. Oh, okay. Well, let me start owning masters. And so what Morris did is he formed his own music publishing company. And he started signing artists. And he would take their masters. He would give them a little bit of money, take their masters. And sometimes he would even say that he wrote the song when he didn't do shit. He would put his name on top of their shit so they wouldn't even have any record of the fact that they wrote the record so he can get the publishing and the royalties off of that. And a lot of these dudes were young, black, brown, Latino, and they were scared of Morris Levy. If you came at him the wrong way, you were going to end up dead. If you ever seen the movies Why Do Fools Fall in Love, Morris Levy is a huge part of that movie that Frankie Lyman and them kept getting ripped off because of him and what he was fucking doing. Morris Levy was a huge reason payola took off. This was something that was already going on, but he didn't give a fuck because I'm gonna pay the DJs to play the record. If they don't play the record, I'm gonna have my mob guys come here and fuck you up. There was other people in the mob, and Michael Franzese talks about that on some of his videos, that were invested in music publishing companies with Morris Levy. So not only was he paying them, but they got a percentage of every record. So now the mob was incentivized to make sure that the DJs did what they were supposed to do. Morris Levy was ripping off the music industry and artists for years. And the Mafia was involved in this the entire time. It happened for so long that everybody knew that this is how it was going down, that when Morris Levy got arrested in the 80s, it was on national TV.
Morris Levy was arrested yesterday at the Ritz-Carlton in Boston. Federal officials say he's the godfather of the American music industry. Levy is the president of the successful Strawberries record store chain here in New England. He's also the founder of the Roulette Records. Federal officials allege Levy uses his ties to organized crime to control the record industry.
This just goes to show you how fucked up the music industry has been for a very long time. Do you know that there really isn't a union for artists like that? There have been things that have bubbled up, and I see one just started in the pandemic. But if you go look at the Screen Actors Guild, go look at when they started. If you go look at the union for Broadway performers, go look at when they started. Where is the union for musicians and artists and rappers and songwriters? They don't really have that. How is this industry generating this much money and there isn't a fucking union? How is that possible? How is that possible? Because of shit like this. The mob was involved. They weren't gonna let that happen. But now, not so much like that. Yeah, shit happens. Y'all can go with these conspiracy theories all you want, but you can do everything on your own. This is another reason why you do not need to sign with a record label. If you do, it needs to be a fair deal and make sure that you own your shit. Because the moment you take somebody's money, and with a record deal, this will be in advance. Now you owe them. And although you might only took 100,000, they might feel like you owe them $500,000. This is what you want to get involved in? You want people just taking credit for your music? You want people finagling ways out of your money? I keep telling you, the legislation for social media hasn't caught up. The legislation for streaming hasn't caught up. There are people who think like this still, like a Morris Levy, who work in the music industry. A Leora Cohen, a Mike Karen, a Adam 22, a Gary V, a Vlad TV, a Little Dickie's bitch ass. They're here to steal. They're here to take. For what? Why? Why put yourself in a position to get bent over and fucked? Why? Independent artists are winning. We control our shit. We own our shit. If you somebody wants to keep winning, you on Instagram, click the link up top. You on YouTube, click the link in the box. If you want to get bent over and fucked, I'm not the person for you. There are other people out here who are ready to give your booty hole a new one. I'm not one of them. The fuck away from me. I'm out the pond. Y'all stay tuned.
Group82music.com.